Hey there, what's up? Andre here from PSD Box. I'm back with another Photoshop tutorial, and what you see here on the screen is the final result of this tutorial. I would say this is an intermediate level tutorial, but well, you need to know a bit about the basics, how to work with layers, adjustment layers, layer masks, clipping layers, and stuff like that. But I already have a beginner's level series for people that are starting out with Photoshop. So, well, this is the final result. As I said, I'll show you the starting image. So we will start from this, and we'll add a few elements like this door and this fence and some light effects. And I'll show you how I made this dark effect using gradient maps and other adjustments. You can follow this tutorial if you have Photoshop CS3, CS4 or CS5, because all the adjustments and everything is available for previous versions of Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop CS6, but everything should be the same on previous versions of Photoshop. So, well, this is my layers palette. We'll start working on this from scratch. So let's get started. So the first thing I'll do is open my background image, pressing Ctrl and O to open my open window, and I'll open this background image. So we will start working with this. It's a bit small, the resolution. You can make it you can make this image bigger if you want to. You will lose a bit of quality, but this background here that you see here will be visible only on the sides of this, so you can make it bigger if you want to. You will not lose too much quality. I'll leave it like that for this tutorial. And the first thing I want to do is hide this tree here. So since this is a quite big area, well, you could use several techniques. I will use the patch tool, and let's see if it works. I don't remember what tool I used on the original PSD file, but let's see if this one works. So let's drag it here maybe and let go. Well, it duplicated that part there, but I don't care too much about that. It will not be too visible because we will have this door here which will cover that, so maybe you can even leave that tree there, but anyways. So once you're done with that, what you will need to do is use I changed the sky. I wanted to add something a bit more dramatic, so you'll have to unlock this background layer, and the fastest way to do that is press and hold the Alt key and double click on the background layer. Let's name this one field and create a new layer underneath it. And you can do that if you press and hold the Control key and click this new layer icon. Let's name this the sky and open our sky stock image. You can use any storm or any sky stock that you want. I wanted to have something a bit more dramatic, and also to have this sort of perspective here. That's why I used this one, but you can just search for storm skies or something like that. And let's paste that sky image here. You can see it's really big compared to my canvas here. So the first thing I'll do is press Ctrl T to load the free transform, lock this aspect ratio and scale it down to about 50%. Let's leave it like that for now because we need to mask the sky now. So what I'll do is select the field layer again, create a layer mask by clicking on this icon, and now I'll get the gradient tool, reset my gradient to black and white, click OK, use the linear type, and now I have to mask this. You can also use the brush tool if you want to, but I like to use the gradient because it's a lot faster. And what I'll do is I want to create a smooth transition between the horizon and my new sky, which you can see here on the background. And what I'll do is click here somewhere and just drag a line by pressing the Shift key. You can see it locks at 15 degrees angle, so that way I can create a straight line and something like that. And if you don't like it, you can draw the gradient again. The longer you make this line, the smoother the transition. So let's see. We'll start from there and we will end there. well, we'll see after we add the door and the rest of the elements. We can retouch this this layer mask. So now I will select my sky, zoom out a bit, and use the move tool by pressing the V key on the keyboard. And now I can move this around the sky. I'll have to make it smaller. If you press the Alt and the Shift key, you can scale from the center. Instead of doing this, you can scale from the center here. So, and you'll also constrain the proportion so you're not going to distort the image. Well, I like something like that, but as I said, I have to retouch the layer mask. I don't like how it looks. You can see the background from here. So I'll select the layer mask again, select the gradient tool, and redraw my gradient. Now you can see it looks a lot better compared to this. So I want to make sure you select the layer mask, and you can redraw this gradient as many times as you want. Just make sure you press the Shift key so you create straight lines. Otherwise you can do things like that, so you can see that. So just press and hold the Shift key and make your gradient. So we have our sky and our main composition here. What we need to do now is add our road here, our road there. So I'll press again Ctrl O to open my window here, and I'll select the road image and click open. And I'll get the rectangular marquee tool. I just want the road. So I'll select this part, press Ctrl C, Ctrl W to close, and Ctrl V to paste that on my image, and you can see it's huge. So press Ctrl T to load the free transform. So this is just standard procedure, let's call it. And I'll convert this into a smart object because I don't know how big I want to have it. So I might want to scale it because I need to mask this. And in order to make it look more realistic, you need to match, let me reduce the opacity a bit. You need to match the perspective of the field here with the road. So I'll move this up a bit, something like that, and I'll create a layer mask. Let's name this road. So I named this layer road, and I'll create a layer mask for it. And I'll get the brush tool, make sure the opacity and the flow are set to 100%. I'll set the hardness to about 50% and the size to about 84. And just start masking the part that I don't need. Okay, so now what I need to do is, you can either make the image smaller, so you can make the image smaller if you want to. I'll leave it like that. I'll just drag it down a bit like so, because I want this road to end right here on the horizon. Well, I'll actually leave the size as it was and just move it down a bit like so. And I'll select the layer mask again and fix these areas here. Now I will zoom in at 100% or even more. Make the brush smaller and take care of the details. I'll have to lower this image to drag it down a bit, but I want to take care of the edges first. Leave a bit of edge here. We will use a soft brush to blend those edges, but first you need to make sure that your road is there in position. You can use the arrow keys up and down to move it on a pixel, pixel by pixel. And now I'll select the layer mask again and the brush tool, and I'll decrease the hardness to 0. And now just mask this edges. I'll increase the size a bit and mask just on the outer edge to make these edges blend with the background. Okay, so just take care of the edges. And I'll take a look at 100% and maybe move it up just a bit, not too much. So something like that. Maybe I'll mask this part a bit more. I'll increase the brush size just a bit and just remove this edge a bit. Okay, so that's my road here. This is my composition, and we can start now to add effects to this. So the first thing I'll do is I want to make the sky a bit brighter. So I selected the sky layer. I'll create a new layer above it. So I selected the sky layer and I'll create a levels adjustment. You can use curves as well if you want to, but I have the values for my levels, and I just modified the midtones and I changed it to 1.64. And you can see that it makes the sky really bright now compared to the original. And now I'll select the field layer, and I will use adjustment layers for this one as well, but this time as clipping masks because I only want to affect the field. So I'll go here to the adjustments icon and add a hue saturation adjustment, and I'll decrease the saturation to -84. And you can see that it affects everything, so that's why I want to clip it, because if you don't clip this adjustment, it will affect the field, it will affect the levels, and it will affect the sky layer as well. So I want to clip it, so I'll right click on it and choose make clipping mask, and that way it only affects the field. Okay, so the road is not affected by this. You can see that even though I enable it and disable it, the road is not affected. Okay, so that's how you get to have this unsaturated background. And then I added yet another adjustment for this same layer, and I used the levels adjustment also as clipping mask. You can create clipping masks if you press and hold the Alt key and put the mouse between the two layers and click. And the values that I use for this adjustment are 138 for the midtones, 6 for the shadows, 231 for the highlights. Now these values are the values that I have, but depending on how you like the image and depending on what kind of effects you like, you can change them. But these are the values that I had. And the reason why I used those is because now you can see that the image is a bit more uniform in terms of contrast. Everything is brighter, so I had too much contrast. So you can see that without the effects, there's too much contrast, and the sky is almost black and white. I have colors here on this line here. So I wanted to have things a bit more uniform. That's why I use these adjustments. So let's do the same for the road. Let's add a hue saturation adjustment, and I dropped the opacity to -38 for the road, and I'll also clip it to the road layer because I only want to affect the road layer. And then once everything had this kind of uniform color and uniform contrast, I added a gradient map that affected the entire image. So go here to the adjustments and choose gradient map, and I'll reverse this. So actually I'll open this and just change the colors. So here are the shadows and here are the highlights, and the gradient map remaps the colors. That's why you can see that parts that should be in shadow are white because I have the white colors assigned to the shadow. So let's change that. And I used a 64% gray. So just have 0, 0 and 64. And then for the shadows, I used a really dark blue. I have the exact color value if you want. So the code is 020305, and click OK. Okay, and I'll have to reverse this. And let's change the blend mode of this to soft light. And you can reduce the opacity, and let's reduce it to about 60% because we had too much contrast. So with this gradient map, we made the whole image a bit darker, and we increased a bit the contrast. So you can see from this to this, we increased a bit the contrast. So we're already started to go through towards that dark effect that we had on the original. You can see this effect. So let's keep adding more elements. So the first thing I will do is add the door. So I go to my stock folder, get this stock image, and this is a stock image that I use on another tutorial, another abstract tutorial that I made. It's already on my YouTube channel. I liked this image, and that's why I used it on this one as well. So I'll select the entire canvas, copy it, and close the image. Now I'll paste it here with Control V, and I'll have to make it a lot smaller. So I'll press Control T, lock the aspect ratio, and let's see the size that I need to use for this. You can convert this into a smart object if you're not sure and it's too big. Something about that big. And notice that if you put the door too low here, it will look like the door is really small. And if you put it up here, it looks like it's quite big. So that's because of the perspective, but you have to find the right place for it and adjust the size. I'll leave it like that. And one thing I want to do is get rid of this line here, this orange or yellow line, and I'll scroll down and locate my road layer, and I have it as a smart object, so I cannot paint on it. I could use the clone stamp or the patch tool to clone it, but to cover that, sorry. But I'll have to create a new layer and name this road fix, for example, and I'll get the clone stamp tool, because with this I have the option to choose all layers or current and below, and that's what I want. I'll put it above this hue saturation adjustment, and I'll make it a bit smaller and sample from there and just paint over it. Make sure you use a soft brush when you do that. Okay, so that's my fixed road. I could have done a better job there. Well, anyways. You can see the before and after. So I just wanted to get rid of that because it was distracting. The only colors I want to have on the image is the color of the door. That's why I unsaturated everything here. And let's name the layer door. And one thing I want to do is change the color of it. So I'll create a hue saturation adjustment as clipping mask. So press Alt and clip it to the door. And since I only want to affect this color, I could use this hand icon to sample the color of the door. And that way I create this selection here. I already have a more detailed tutorial about selective color changes, and I'll give you the link to that so you can follow that tutorial. And I don't want to unsaturate it, I want to change the color. I want to make it green, but you can see that it also affects a bit this part here, and I don't want that, so I'll have to adjust the selection from here. Okay, let's move it a bit towards that part, maybe make it a bit darker as well, and increase the saturation just a bit. So you can see the before and after. I still have to adjust this a bit because I don't want to include these colors here, so I just want to change the color of the door. Of course, you can use the layer mask and just get the brush tool and really quickly with the soft brush just mask this part of the door, this part of the image, and that way you make sure that the color is not affecting these parts. Okay, next thing we need to do is make some shadows to give this door a bit more of realism. So I'll create a layer below the door layer and I'll name it door shadow. And I'll get the brush tool and I'll follow my standard procedure, let's call it. I use this technique a lot. The first thing I do is make the brush a bit smaller. I decrease the flow to about, let's leave it on 40%, and the opacity as well. And just make the contact shadows. Just let's change the color to black first, because shadows look better on black, not white. So make sure you have the black color, and just paint a few shadows right where the object touches the ground. I'll do it again because I don't like how it looked. And you can zoom in as much as you need so you can see it better. I have to straighten my tablet because I'm not doing a good job here. I'm in a really awkward position here, that's why I cannot draw straight, because I also have the mic here and I cannot adjust my position, but I'm doing my best. One thing you can do, since this is a straight line, is click once on a place right here. You can see I'm painting with just with the side of the brush. I don't do things like that. I just paint with the with the lower part of the brush. So you can click once on a spot and then press the Shift key. Click on the other side of the object, and that way you create a straight line. And then do the same a few times until you can see that the shadow becomes stronger. So it's a lot better than doing it by hand, because I cannot do it right now. And then once you have the contact shadow, increase the brush size just a bit and leave the hardness to 0, and decrease the flow and the opacity to about 20-25%. Make a few passes to create a soft shadow around your object, and maybe even more depending on the kind of background you have. And then you can also use the eraser tool if you painted too much, and use a really low opacity and take away the effect. Okay, so that's my shadow there. Maybe it's not the most realistic shadow I ever made, but it's better than not having any shadows at all. You can also paint shadows on the door itself. So I'll create another clipping mask for another clipping layer, sorry, for the door, and I'll name it Door Shadow 2. Get the brush tool, and with this same opacity and flow, just paint a few, even lower, it's too strong. Just paint a few more shadows on the door itself to darken the edges. That will give a bit more drama to it, especially here the doorstep. Don't paint too much over this white area because it will not look too nice. Just paint the door itself. Okay, so you can see the before and after. Maybe it's too strong, I'll decrease the opacity just a bit. You can also play with blend modes if you want to. Okay, so now that we have the door, let's add more elements. So I will copy the entire canvas and go back to my image and paste it below the door and make it smaller. Let's make it about 30% of the original size, and I'll place it right here. And then I'll duplicate it and move it right there. And now all I have to do is erase parts that I don't need. Not that one. So delete that part. Okay, and now delete this part as well because I don't need it. And I have my fence ready. And I will now merge both layers and duplicate the layer and move it to the other side. And probably flip it horizontally. Okay, so now both look pretty much the same. Okay, so we have our fence ready. Let's name the layers. This is fence left and this is fence right. And we need to blend this a bit with the background. And if you what you can do also is, if you want, is just duplicate that fence, flip it vertically, and then just delete the top part. And that's just if you want to have that bar on the bottom as well. Then you can use the eraser or a layer mask to mask the background. You can see on the original I had a small part there, but it's not really visible, so you can leave it like this. Also, if you see white bits right here on these lines, what you can do is use layer styles and just use inner shadow and decrease the distance to 0 and the size to about let's see, about 2 pixels, or depending on the amount of white you see there. And maybe use the multiply blend mode, or use the normal blend mode, or just maybe change the color to match the color of the fence and use the multiply blend mode on, and then play with the opacity. But I'll leave it like that because it's not too visible and it doesn't bother me. One thing I would like to do though is group this 2 layers, and since I'm using Photoshop CS6, I can apply adjustments to the whole group. If you have previous versions of Photoshop, you have to apply the same adjustments, but on each layer. So what I will do is use a hue saturation adjustment. And I'll clip this adjustment to the group itself. So I'll press and hold the Alt key and click between the 2 layers, and I will decrease the opacity because I want these fences, you can see they are blue. I want to have them almost black and white. And also what I can do is apply a style to the entire group, and I could use a gradient overlay. And I didn't do this on the original, I just came up with the idea now. Just use the reflected gradient and have the light concentrated here and have this both parts a bit in shadow, and maybe use the soft light blend mode. Let's see how it looks, and decrease the opacity just a bit. It doesn't look bad. Let's leave the opacity on 20% and click OK. Just a bit of an effect to make these sides a bit darker. And what I can also do is inside the same group below both layers, create a shadow layer and use the brush tool and low opacity, about 20%, and flow as well, and just create a line, just as I told you a moment ago. And using the shift key you can create straight lines. So just, you can see I'm clicking on 2 sides, and that way the line is created automatically. And maybe decrease the opacity just a bit. Okay, so that's my fence there. We need to add some wires here, so go back to the stock folder. We are lucky that this is a PNG file. You can see the name of the author here. I'll give you the link so you can go to the channel, to their profile, and get this image. And also other great stock images that they have. So I'll copy this and go back to my canvas. And I'll paste this above the fence. You can see it's really big, so I'll have to make it smaller. And I'll make it about 20%. Let's see if it's too big. Actually, let's make it a bit bigger. And you can use levels to make it darker, because you can see it's almost not too visible. So you can use the levels to make it darker. And now duplicate that. place it there. Maybe let's see if I can flip it, maybe it looks better. Okay, and I'll merge both layers. Let's name this wire 1, duplicate that and put it on the other side. So I'm doing this a bit quick, so you can take your time and take care of all the details, but I just want to show you how I did it. Okay, and now I added a second kind of wires using another PNG for another barbed wire. And you can copy this, go back to your image, let's put these wires into a group. You can group layer if you select them and press Ctrl G. Let's name these wires and place my barbed wires below these other 2 layers. Name this barbed 1 and make it way smaller. Let's see, about 20%. Yeah, that's not looking bad. And I'll now duplicate that. I'll have to zoom in a bit and just move it there, and now flip it horizontally so that it matches perfectly with the other end. And now I will merge both layers and duplicate and move them to a side, and now merge them again. Duplicate again, and in order to have some variation, I'll flip them vertically and move them up a bit and maybe a bit to the side. And now select both layers again, press and hold the Alt key and move them up a bit, and that way you create a copy. And now I will flip them horizontally and move them to the other side. Just try to have some variation. And maybe I will have to make these ones a bit brighter, or maybe lower the using the levels just like I did before. Make wires 1 and wire 2 darker. Okay, so now it looks a bit better. So that's how I added the wires and the fence. The next thing that I did is I added a crow there, but before that, let's finish with the door here. What I did next is add a lot of locks here on this door, because I wanted to, as you can see, what I did here is sort of closed road. Everything's locked and you cannot pass this this place here, and that's what I wanted to create with this image, sort of a locked door or whatever, locked destiny or whatever you want to call it. You can give it your own meaning. So what I did is I searched for padlocks and I just placed them right here on the door. So you can Google them, you can search on DeviantArt. I will not give you links to those because there are a lot of them. You can just search for them. And what I did is I got the locks from the original image, and you can see they're here. Just extract them from the background and just place them right there on your door. Let me copy these ones and place them above everything, and you can see these are my locks. So just find locks from the internet and move them around a bit, and don't have them all straight, just change the position a bit and place them here. And the next thing I did, they don't look too realistic. Let's name this layer 2 locks. What I did next is create a sort of a metal piece there. So I'll show you how I did that. I'll create a new layer below the locks. And what I'm talking about is this small metal piece here. You can see that that's the piece that the lock is linked to. So I just used the rectangular marquee tool. Zoom in as much as you can. You can see the quality is really bad. That's why I want to work with high resolution images. So, and then I filled this with black, and you can use a hard brush to just erase parts of it because it's too straight and it's not realistic. just erase a bit the edges so that it's not too straight. You can also change the position slightly like that. And you can see that if you look at zoom 100%, it looks a bit better. Maybe I would, you can use layer styles if you want, and you can add, let's say, a pattern overlay and just decrease the opacity a bit. And then a color overlay and make it look a bit rusty, like so, and use the soft light or overlay blend mode just to give it a sort of a brown color. Let's name this metal piece. Metal only. And I also added some bolts there on the edges. You can do that as well with a really small hard edge brush. I will have to rasterize the layer style and just paint once there like that. Well, not the eraser tool, with the brush tool. Of course, you have to increase the opacity and the flow. So let's do it once again, like so. And you can see how it looks. It looks a bit better than this. So that's my metal piece there. And now just press Ctrl J to duplicate that, and with the move tool, just move it there. And you can, as I said, you can spin it around a bit so that it's not looking exactly the same for each one. You can you can resize them and squeeze them a bit, like so, and rotate them around. Just make sure you watch at 100% zoom, because that's when you will see it better. And just a few more duplicates there. And for this one, I will not add anything, only for the one that's on top. And now you can see that it looks a bit better. And the next thing we need to do now to make this a bit more realistic and give a bit of depth is add shadows to our locks. But I want to group all this metal layers so we have more space on the layers palette. Metal, and for the locks, since I have them all on the same layer, I will add the layer styles for this layer. So you can use the layer styles to create the shadows for the locks. Just use drop shadow and just change the angle to about 80 or 90 degrees. Don't make the shadow too soft. Let's use about 2 pixels for this canvas size. And let's see a distance of 4 or maybe 3 pixels, but decrease the opacity just a bit. Let's leave the size to 4 pixels because I want it a bit smoother, and the opacity to about 60%. And now it looks a bit more realistic. You can see without the shadows and with the shadows. So that's how I added the locks there. It takes a bit of time until you extract all of them from their backgrounds, and to make this metal piece here and adding the shadows. It takes a bit of time, but I think it's worth it because it looks nice. Because that was the concept of this artwork, this unsaturated and dark mood image and everything, well, sort of hopeless and locked door. And then I will add a text here. But let's continue and add that crow there, and I'll go back to my stock image. Again, I have this on PNG format. You can search for crow stocks if you like to add another one. And I'll just place it there and make it smaller. Have to be careful with the proportions, because a lot of users commented on my tutorial about the hard light effect. When I added that man on the road, they said that it was too big, and actually that tutorial was not about proportions. I just wanted to show that effect, but everyone seemed to freak out when they saw that giant man on the road there. I'll put a video here so you can see it. But anyways, I will try to match the proportions here. Hope this crow is not too big for your taste. But anyway, you can make it as big as you want on your own artwork. Let's name this to Crow. And I also added on the original the text here. This is a quote in Latin that means love conquers everything or something like that. I will not add it. You can do that by yourself if you want to. It's not really difficult. Just use the text tool and then modify it to give it that curved shape with this tool here. It's not active right now. I'll go back to my image because I want to add those lamps here, those street lamps. So I'll open them. We are lucky because this is a PNG file. So you just have to select it, paste it on your canvas, and you'll have to make them smaller maybe. Let's make it about 20% smaller. It's nice, but maybe I would make it a bit bigger. So let me resize that again to 30%. That's too big. I would work with smart objects because you can keep the original size of the image. So later on, if you want to make it bigger, you will be able to do that. And I'll place one lamp here, and the other one I'll duplicate the layer after I rename it. Lamp left and Control J to duplicate that. Move it here, and I'll flip it horizontally because I want to have the light part. You can see, let me zoom in a bit. You can see that this part, the left part, has a bit of highlight there. And I want the highlight part to be facing the door because I want to concentrate the light here. And that's, I will do that on the final effect when I will add the lighting effects filter. But we have the lamps here, and again I will duplicate this, and now I will group these lamps. I will add a hue saturation adjustment for the whole group, so I will clip it to the group. I'll also add some levels clipped to this group, and let's see, I just want to make them a bit darker. About 10, and maybe brighten up the midtones just a bit, like so. So you can see I just changed a bit the contrast. You can leave them as they are if you want to. And the next thing we need to do is add some shadows. I will add the shadows inside this group. You can add them outside, but I take advantage that I have the group, and that way I don't overcrowd my layers palette. That's my lamp shadow. Again, I'll use the brush tool. Opacity and flow to about 20%. Make sure you have the color set to black. Just paint some shadows where these lamps touch the ground. And then if you want a few shadows like that. Basically some shadows right there close to where the lamps touch the ground. And I will change a bit the levels because I don't like that the midtones are too bright and the shadows too dark. So let's leave this to 5, the shadows. Okay, and now we need to add the lights and the glow lights here, but we will do that after we add the effects. Let's add that text there on the in front of the door. So I'll create a new layer, and I'll get the type tool. Font that I used is the franchise font, the franchise bold. You can download this for free from the internet, just to Google it. And I'll also give the link to it if you want to. So you can Google it or find the link on my website. And I'll type, I used another Latin word that means weight. So I'll have to make it bigger. Let's see, about 60. Change the color to white. So I typed this word, which, as I said, it means wait in Latin, or have be patient or something like that. And I have to check the character settings here. Everything's okay. And in order to make this look a bit better, like it's typed on the road itself, I will use this warp text, and I'll choose the arc and just leave this to 0 and change the vertical to something like that and make the text bigger. Try to match this same angle, so I will open again the warp text, and okay, that looks a bit better. I wanted to have this parallel line, so I want to have the text parallel to this lines there, but now it's too large, so I'll have to make this a bit smaller, like so. And so just adjust your text. Okay, that looks okay. Let's leave that where it was and leave this to 0. Maybe let's leave it to 1. Okay, and click OK. And then change the blend mode to, let's see, maybe overlay works or soft light. Yeah, overlay looks better, and just drop the opacity just a bit. I want to make it just a bit bigger, like so. You can also change if the effect is too strong at 100%, change the text color to a bit of a darker tone of gray, like so. So that's my text there. So everything is done. We still have to add these lights here, but we will do that after we make the general light change, which is now. So what I will do is create a stamp of this image, pressing Shift, Control, Alt, and E, Shift, Command, Option, and E on a Mac, and that will create a stamp of all the visible layer. And I'll name this stamp or final. Let's name it final. And I'll turn this into a smart object because I will use the lighting effects filter on it. So I'll go to Filter, Render, Lighting Effects. And this is available on previous versions of Photoshop, but the interface is different on Photoshop CS6. And I will use a spotlight. The intensity and everything depends on what kind of effect you want to have. But what I want to do is I want to have more light here on the center and darken the edges, the corners. So I'll have to make this image a bit smaller. This light, sorry. Something like that, and maybe come the light a bit from higher up, so I'll have to squeeze it just a bit, like so. And I will increase the hotspot, and of course I'll have to lower the intensity because it's too strong. I don't want to burn the highlights here on the sky. Something like that, maybe a bit higher up. Make the hotspot bigger, maybe make the image a bit rounder. So from here you can play with the effects. If you want to have less contrast, you can use the metallic, but we will use another technique with a solid color. So I'll leave this to 100%. Maybe increase a bit the ambience and maybe decrease the exposure a bit. You can also colorize this or give a color to it, but I'll leave it as it is. And let's click OK, and if it's not looking nice, we will come back because I applied this to a smart object, so we can edit this filter whenever we want. So yeah, I like how it looks. I want to have these shadows here, have the word here visible, and have more light on the door. Even though it's not too much, let's add just a bit more. So I'll increase the exposure slightly, maybe make the hotspot a bit smaller and increase the ambience just a bit. Okay, now we can make those lights here and then apply the last effects. So I'll create a new layer and I'll name them light glows. And I will use the brush tool, although I have another more realistic technique if you want to add flares. I have a tutorial on how to create car lights and things like that, and it also works for this kind of lighting here. But with the brush tool for this kind of image, I like how it looks as well. So I'll use the 100% brush, and I will change the blend mode of this layer to screen. And some people ask me, how do I know what color to use? Because if you use the white color, it will look white, and that's not what I want. First, I want to decrease the hardness. But with the screen blend mode, the darker the color, and the less effect you have. So I will use a slightly yellow color, a gray tone like that, and you can see how that looks. It looks quite realistic. Maybe it's a bit too strong, so it depends on what you like and how realistic you want your image to look. Maybe colorize it a bit more and make it a bit darker, and do that again. That's how I created the glows of light. It's not really on the center, so I'll do it again. If you want to have a stronger effect in the middle, make the brush smaller and make the color a bit brighter, and just make another touch of light right there on the center. And I also added this glow right here, really soft. So increase the brush size like something like this, and use a really dark color, and just create a glow of light like that. And you can see it's too strong, so I'll use an even darker color like that, and just type again, just to give it a bit of light there, like so. And that's the light effects that I have. And now for the final effects, as I said, I wanted to have a bit of a contrast effect here. But before applying those effects, since I have this smart object here, I want to add another filter, which is it's a topaz filter called Detail 2. This is the only third-party filter that I use, and I only use it on my final effects. And let's see, black and white contrasted is too strong. Interior strong detail. Well, let's adjust this because it's too strong. I don't want such a strong effect. I just want to increase the details, especially here on the clouds, and decrease the saturation just a bit. So it's a plugin that I use on this kind of abstract images. As I said, it's the only third-party filter that I use. I'm not a big fan of filters, but this one I really like the effect that you get with this filter. Okay, medium detail a bit stronger, and let's click OK and see what we get. So you will see the before and after. So this is the filter and the lighting effects combined. Let's zoom in a bit. So now I can move on and add that effect that I was talking about. So I will create a solid color, a fill layer, and I'll use, well, let's deal with the color later. First, let's change the blend mode to exclusion. This is a technique that I use on other tutorials. So change the blend mode to exclusion, if I can find it right here. And this blend mode works, you can see it kind of inverts the image. So if I set this to blue and I put the blue here, it will make the highlights yellow, because the yellow is the opposite of blue. And I talked about opposite colors on my other tutorial about when I talked about adjustments. And I will use a really dark color, almost black, and you will see the effect. It's subtle, but it's really nice. I'll use a color like this and click OK. And if I deactivate this, you will see that it kind of reduces the contrast just a bit. So I like this, just a touch of contrast that it takes away. And well, this is the final effect that I got. You can also use, for example, a photo filter. Let's see if we can add a photo filter and give it a touch of color. Let's change this to blue, maybe, and change the blend mode to maybe hard light. See how it looks. Yeah, it looks very strong, so we'll have to decrease the opacity a lot. But again, you will add more contrast, which is we took away contrast by using this technique. But with this one, you add more contrast and give it a bit more color. So well, it depends on the kind of effects you want. So well, this is the tutorial that I wanted to share with you. I hope you liked the idea, and well, remember that you can embed this video on your website, on your blog, or wherever you want, as long as you don't download it and upload it somewhere else. I hope you like my Photoshop tutorials. I'm Andrei from PSD Box. Thanks for watching, take care, and see you next time.